But first to Yemen. On Friday, 12 people died in an Al-Qaeda bomb attack there, the target Shia Muslims. The attack, one of a number since 90 soldiers were killed after a suicide bomber dressed in an army uniform detonated a bomb during a military parade rehearsal a week ago. Iona Craig is in Yemen and has sent us this report on efforts to combat the Al-Qaeda threat. Be warned that her dispatch contains some graphic explanations of atrocities in the troubled country.
From the top of the Mount Thira Plateau, Yemen's southern province of Abyan stretches out to the Arabian Sea. Between the mountain escarpment and the blue water haze on the distant horizon, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has made its home. The hidden war being fought out around the towns in the desert and jagged mountain ranges below is still invisible from the plateau. The first signs of Yemeni military positions come into view during the winding descent from the 1,000-metre high ridge. Tanks and handfuls of soldiers surround the ancient forts, upholding their original purpose as defensive positions. At night, sporadic shelling from artillery echoes from the hillside, apparent warning shots to any Al-Qaeda militants looking to attack under the cover of the mosquito-infested darkness. Approaching the town of Lauda on the desert plain, tank tracks are tattooed into the asphalt. Here, on the northern front of the US-backed war against Al-Qaeda's most threatening offshoot, the first victory is being celebrated. We are the first ones to have beaten Al-Qaeda. No one has beaten them before, not in Pakistan, Afghanistan, or here in Yemen, boasts Al-Qaeda, one of the commanders of the People's Resistance Army that rose up against the insurgents after Yemeni troops abandoned their positions on the edge of the battle-scarred town of Lauda. For 2 months, the soldiers and ragtag force of local residents and tribesmen vied for control of the town against the guerrilla tactics of the Al-Qaeda-linked fighters, along with the tanks and heavy weapons captured from the retreating military units. The People's Militia of some 5,000 men, armed with just AK-47s and vintage bolt-action rifles, took the greatest number of casualties. 60 men died in the battle to hold the town, while 33 government soldiers lost their lives, and more than 580 of the joint force were left injured. After the residents' triumph last week, the bodies of at least a dozen local fighters and soldiers, captured by the Al-Qaeda offshoot Ansar al-Sharia, were found in the destroyed, charred remains of the town's electricity facility. Decapitated, their heads tossed to one side, slaughtered like animals by the insurgents before their final retreat across the desert. A grim, unspoken message left to strike fear into those that dared fight them. "They peeled his head off like the top of a can," said the commander as he motioned the pulling of hair and mimicked a knife being sliced across his scalp. As Southerners calling for succession and independence from the governing North, the local militia groups see Yemen's military as an occupying force. But, for the first time, the historic rivals fought alongside each other, reluctant partners in the battle to push Ansar al-Sharia out of at least 5 towns in the province that have been under their control for more than a year. From a nearby military base, Jamal Nasser al-Aqal, the provincial governor, insists that although fighting Al-Qaeda is a priority, the greatest problem faced by the people in southern Yemen is poverty. He says the best way the West and America can assist to deal with the militant threat is through economic assistance and development. Aid agencies warned this week that 10 million Yemenis, 44% of the population, are undernourished. Although the fighting in Lauda has ended, several towns, including the provincial capital of Zinjibar, remain under the control of Ansar al-Sharia, who have sought to win over local populations by providing electricity, water, food, and a Sharia law justice system. Yemen's army has made several attempts to capture the coastal city of Zinjibar, but despite being vastly outnumbered by some 20,000 troops in Abyan, backed by US trainers and coordinators, the estimated 2,000 or so Islamists have so far prevented government forces from making sustainable advances into more towns. More than 160,000 people have fled the fighting in Abyan since May last year. From the port city of Aden, where displaced families are living in schools, many are pessimistic at the prospect of returning home. As Sadiq al-Qad, who fled the town of Zinjibar last year, says, "Even if we go back, we have nothing left but the vultures and the snakes." For World Report, this is Iona Craig in Lauda, Yemen.